Howdy. These are bonus topics for selection statements, and what I mean by that is these topics are not on the AP test and will not be tested in class. They're just good things you should know. There is a third conjunction operator. The XOR conjunction produces a true value when one operand is true and the other operand is false, so it's checking to see if they're different. When both operands are the same, it will produce a false result. The symbol for XOR is that little caret, and I have the truth table below it. Operand 1, operand 2, result. Notice the only time you get a true as a result is when one operand is different from the other. The next thing is the ternary operator. The ternary operator gives a value based on a Boolean expression. When the expression is true, the first value is used. When the expression is false, the second value is used. Sometimes when you're looking at other people's code online, you're going to see that they use a ternary operator. So it's important for you to understand what it is. So it's kind of like an if-else. As long as the if-else would result in storing a value into a variable or producing a value. So it only works under very specific circumstances. You can't replace all your if-elses with ternary operators. So it has an expression and then a question mark. If that expression resulted in a true, we will use value 1, the value after the question mark. If the expression was false, we will use value 2, which is the value after the colon. An example. If I wanted the smaller of two integers, a and b, I could say int smaller equals a less than b. If a is less than b, we will take a and store it into smaller. Otherwise, we will put b into smaller. The next thing is the switch statement. The switch statement is another way to write an if, else chain where each comparison is to an exact value. You'll see more of what I'm talking about on the next slide. The switch statement will attempt to match the value of the variable with the value from the case. Once a case is found that matches the value of the variable, it will execute every line of code in the switch until a break is reached or the switch is fully run. That probably doesn't mean a whole lot to you, but I'm going to show you two examples and this will make some sense. So, the format of a switch statement. Switch, parenthesis, the variable that you're analyzing, parenthesis. Then you have curly braces. Case, some value. When it's this value, do this stuff, then break. The break has to be there. Well, it doesn't have to be, but I'm going to show you what happens if it's not there in a little bit. Case, value 2, some other value you're checking against. Statements for doing value 2, then break. Case 3, statements for doing whatever you want to do when it's value 3, break. Default, this is kind of like your else. This is what I want to do if it wasn't any of those things. So for example, let's say we have a task list to complete based on which student group we're in. If we're a red student, we haven't gotten our ID from the school, and we need to go gather. If we're flagged as red, we need to go gather our ID. If we're flagged as yellow, we're almost ready for school. We need to go collect our books. If you're flagged as green, you need to report to class. If you're flagged as any other color or not flagged at all, then you are not enrolled. You would have to enroll in the school. And notice, once it says red, it says gather student ID and then break. I don't need to do anything else. If you're yellow, collect books. I don't need to do anything else. If you're green, report to class. Don't need to do anything else. If you're none of those things, you are not enrolled. Now this doesn't use any of the extra power that switch has. Switch can actually do something a little bit better than an if-else chain. So let's see what that is. Now here's that same example, but I changed it up. You're going to notice, oh, I made a mistake. So let's write in the correction here. What I wanted here, well, let's not write in the correction. Let's look at what it does, and then we'll write in the correction. So let me go ahead and erase that. So this is the extra power of switch. This is different from an if-else chain. Complete the tasks So now it might be more than one task. If you're red, it's going to say, gather your student ID. But there's no break. Once you hit a case that's true, it will do all lines of code until you hit a break or until the switch statement is finished. So it'll say gather student ID because you're red. Then you should collect books. So it'll also say collect books. Then it will say report to class because after you've gathered your ID, collected your books, you should report to class. But unfortunately, it's going to say you are not enrolled because I didn't tell it not to say you are not enrolled. So how we do that is we add a break statement right here. So if you're a red student, it's going to say gather student ID, collect your books, report to class, and then it hits a break so it skips the rest of it. So we do not see you are not enrolled. If you are a yellow student, you would see collect books, report to class. Because it wasn't true before yellow, so we didn't do any of these commands. But once yellow is true, we're going to do everything until we hit a break or until we're out. So they would be collect books, report to class. Green would only be report to class. If you're none of those things, you would go to the default, you are not enrolled. All right, that's it.